Welcome back to In Focus. And just before we went on break, we were talking with Dr. Christopher Fomunyo of the National Democratic Institute. You mentioned something very important before we went to break, and this is the expected relationship between the U.S. and Africa under Mr. Obama. Now, one of the key people to also give in their congratulatory message to Mr. Obama was the president of Zimbabwe, President Robert Mugabe, whose relationship with the Bush administration has really been tense. What do you see happening in scenarios such as that under this new administration?
Well, I think Mr. Mugabe would be fooling himself if he thought that all of a sudden, because President Barack Obama has been elected, that that's going to change U.S. policy towards Zimbabwe. I think that we're going to see a consistent push for more democracy in Zimbabwe, for the people of Zimbabwe to be given the opportunity to choose their leaders through free and credible elections. And I don't think that there's going to be any letting up on the pressure that is currently being put on the Mugabe government. The one thing that I am certain Barack Obama presidency will bring to the Zimbabwe issue is that he's going to deprive ZANU-PF and Mugabe especially of the kind of outlandish declarations that he's had in the past against Bush or Tony Blair of London. He couldn't say today that Barack Obama doesn't understand the realities of Zimbabwe, because Barack Obama knows Africa, knows Zimbabwe, and can understand the difficulties that the people of Zimbabwe are going through.
Now, Dr. Fomunyo, we know that one of the things that happens on the continent is that politicians do not want to hear any message that is kind of projecting them as being not doing their job properly. Does it matter that it's President Obama if it comes to his position on democracy and the need to entrench democracy in the systems, or are they going to turn around again and say, you have no business interfering?
You know, one of the several advantages that a Barack Obama presidency would bring is that he has the potential to be able to communicate past the leaders. He is going to be able to interact with Africans at the grassroots level, the youth, the younger generation of Africans directly without necessarily going through their leaders. So I think any leader who thinks that he's going to be able to use the old arguments against the United States when Barack Obama is in the presidency is really going to be setting himself up for failure. And I think that Barack Obama himself embodies the success of a democratic story. So he has almost no choice but to talk about democratic governance, because all of the issues, how can you explain otherwise that a minority, a child who lived without his parents, who grew up with the grandparents, went through good academic institutions, but then went back to serve his community, would emerge as the president of the most powerful nation on earth, were it not through a democratic process? So Barack Obama almost has no choice but to talk about democratic governance to these leaders.
Are the African leaders in the habit of learning from what happens elsewhere, replicating some of those things, or do they many times just ignore that and go on with their own style?
Well, my sense is that a number of them are going to be very astute in listening and realizing that the world is changing, because the election of Barack Obama is being felt not just in the United States, but across the world, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. There's a silent revolution taking place across the globe, and people are going to stand up and watch. Now in London, in France, in the UK and in France, there are huge discussions about could the UK and could France have a black president someday? Something that nobody would have imagined would have taken place a year before now. So across the African continent, there's going to be a new kind of discussion, and I think leaders, especially autocratic leaders, better stand up and listen.
Now, you know, obviously the U.S. is going through a very tough economic time the world over, and many, of course, have brought in, this has brought to the question about what will happen to the humanitarian assistance that Africa has been receiving. Has this economic downturn affected that? And when you look at what the current president, George Bush, has achieved in Africa, what kind of legacy do you see Mr. Obama following through on that same?
Well, I would be the first to admit that despite some of the shortcomings that the Bush administration has had in foreign policy, Africa, surprisingly or paradoxically, is one of those areas that has really benefited from the Bush administration's policies, whether it's in the area of HIV/AIDS, healthcare, building the security, the capacity of various security forces to work in peacekeeping missions, helping resolve conflicts, for example, in Southern Sudan and other places across the continent. So I think that in many ways, the Bush administration has raised the bar pretty high, and that would make it easier for President Barack Obama when he gets into office. If he only maintained the same level of attention that President Bush has showed towards Africa, he would have accomplished quite a lot. But my sense is that he's going to look for ways to build upon that and consolidate some of those issues as well.
Now, the way, Doctor, we saw people celebrate in Africa, right from Kenya to other countries, aside from the leadership, do you fear that there might be a sense of frustration after some time among the populace who may not understand the intricacy of intercontinental, interaction and just be looking at the possibilities of President Barack Obama resolving their problems?
Well, it's always that gap between citizens' expectations and the realities on the ground. Of course, you know, the U.S. is going through a very difficult economic time. There may be cuts in some of the policies that he may have wanted to enact. We remember during the debate, the vice presidential debate, Joe Biden said one of the areas they will cut would be foreign aid. So, you know, that's going to be there's bound to be a gap between the promises and the expectations and what he actually delivers on. The ordinary people probably would learn to their chagrin a year or two into his administration that he's no longer as popular as he was when he was first elected. That's just part of the realities of life. But if he can help create a new dialogue, renewed dialogue with Africans, and help African leaders contribute to some of the changes on the continent itself. I think Africa is not a poor continent. We just need to be able to manage our own resources better. And maybe that's what would help provide some satisfaction to Africans.
There's a call from a lot of African leaders for more partnership with the U.S., not more hand-downs, but a partnership of equal leverage. How do you see that manifesting itself under a new administration?
I think when people talk about partnership, they also need to recognize that in the U.S., especially when it comes to trade and business relationships, that those business relationships are created by the U.S. private sector. And they need, in the African countries, we need to create the enabling environment for U.S. businesses to be able to come in and invest and do business with our people, and then through that process generate jobs and other products from the African continent. So it's not going to be the president from the White House signing an executive order to say U.S. businesses go invest in Africa. We as Africans need to create that enabling environment, and U.S. businesses would come and the partnerships would develop.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fomunyo.
My pleasure
and
being here.
Many thanks to our guest, Dr. Christopher Fomunyo, Senior Associate for Africa at the National Democratic Institute.